9C, approve charter school agreement with Knoxville Preparatory School.
Motion by Ms. Christie, second by Ms. Horn. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Bike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you to Gary for, I had a couple of requests for changes, and I'm glad that they accepted the change to 90 business days for giving us notice, whether they're moving or not, or if that were to happen. One thing I do want to bring up that they were not in agreement with, that maybe Mr. Myers could provide some clarity. Going back to section 2.33, cost for special education, where we were talking about where in that process that they assume responsibility. And the last line of the first paragraph says, the charter school's financial obligation begins once a student has an IEP. And it seemed kind of like in the conversation on Monday that their responsibility is, and financial responsibility is before that. So I had requested that the potential change would be the charter school's financial obligation begins once a student has been suspected of needing student supports and or special education interventions. And they were not in agreement to this change. Mr. Myers, could you speak again to kind of like what that process is, like when they're suspected, like what they will have to pay for? I think maybe I didn't understand, like where the charter school's financial obligation really does start.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bite, for the question. So Mr. Dupler and I actually talked about this subsection of the contract, and since it is specific to special education. So I think to help clear some of this up, so once a student is suspected of having an educational disability, that student and family then have the protections afforded to them under those procedural rights and safeguards. That's very different than actually receiving the special education services, right? So the costs that would be encumbered based on a particular special education service doesn't actually start until the child is identified as having that educational disability. So that is, I think, why that language is that way. And Mr. Dupler can, if I haven't done a good job explaining that, Mr. Dupler can weigh in. But it's my understanding, based on the way this subsection is designed, that what they're saying is once we've identified that the student does, in fact, qualify for special education services, then the charter school would be responsible for the financial obligation to deliver those services.
This specifically says IEP, so I was a little confused on if students have 504s. Is there a cost when students have 504s to the district?
So if a charter school student has a 504 plan, there would be no specific cost associated with that to the district. So Section 504 of the ADA does not have a funding element, which is a pretty significant difference between that and the IDEA, which is, of course, federally funded. So we don't get funding for students.
So there aren't supports that under a 504 that would have any sort of cost?
Not to the Knox County schools, outside of what the ramifications might be under TISA, which is not my world. But no, there's no specific. There would be no specific cost to our district to help them implement a 504 plan.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? And just for a point of clarification, since Ms. Christie made the motion on this, Ms. Christie, will you clarify which version you're moving to approve? The 11.3 version and the 12.6 revised versions are attached. So I assume you mean the 12.6 version. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. Okay, so if we do not have any more discussion on this item, Ms. Coatney, will you do a roll call vote, please? Thank you.
Dr. Butler? Ms. Owen? Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Bike?
Pass.
Ms. Horn? Yes. Mr. Triplett?
Yes.
Ms. Christie? Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
Dr. Butler, would you like to change your pass vote? Ms. Bike, would you like to change yours? Madam Chair, that's 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 2 pass.
So motion carries.